Next on the news, as the nation mourns over the Texas school shooting, the gun control debate has ignited once again. How laws rooted in history are making the fight even worse. And the grieving community coming together in faith to remember the victims. The national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, John Lavenberg, is there.
It was a heart-wrenching moment here in Uvalde, where the names of 21 people killed were read aloud at a mass to honor them. I'll have details on that and more.
Also, with one signature, Oklahoma now has the strictest abortion law in the nation. Plus, members of the NYPD honored for their fast actions to save a man in a dangerous situation in the subway. I'm Christine Persichetti. Current News starts right now. All churches in the Diocese of Brooklyn tolled their bells 21 times for the victims of the Texas school shooting. The diocese joined other houses of worship in New York at noon to commemorate the lives of the 19 children and 2 teachers killed at the request of Mayor Eric Adams. As the investigation continues into this latest school shooting, the debate over gun laws is heating up once again. In Texas alone, there have been 8 mass shootings over the last 13 years. 19 small children slaughtered by a gunman not much older than they were. He was the legal owner of 2 AR-15 style rifles.
They are assault rifles. It's the first thing he did when he turned 18.
A week ago, a day after his 18th birthday, he bought a rifle, according to the local state senator. The next day, 375 rounds of ammunition. 2 days after that, a second rifle. 4 days later, he shot and killed 19 kids and 2 adults.
Maybe we could at least agree that we should raise the age for purchasing these weapons.
But just last year, lawmakers lowered to 18 the age some Texans can get a handgun license. For rifles, Texas law mirrors federal law, 18 and up. You can buy one of these after just a basic background check. But from an unlicensed dealer or at a gun show, no check is required. In California, the legal age to buy assault-style rifles was upped to 21 in 2019. 2 weeks ago, it was struck down back to 18. Why? America would not exist without the heroism of the young adults who fought and died in our Revolutionary Army, wrote Judge Ryan Nelson. Today, we reaffirm that our Constitution still protects the right that enabled their sacrifice, the right of young adults to keep and bear arms. So 18-year-olds in California can buy semi-automatic weapons today, in part because teenage soldiers died carrying single-shot muskets in a war more than 200 years ago.
Stronger gun laws save lives. Weaker gun laws cause gun crime and gun violence. The data is in. We need our lawmakers to act.
This latest tragedy in Texas is far from an isolated instance of a legally armed teenage attacker. Just 11 days ago, an 18-year-old white supremacist gunned down 13 people in a predominantly black neighborhood of Buffalo, New York, also armed with a semi-automatic weapon that he was also legally allowed to buy and own. Many Republican lawmakers are calling for efforts to address mental health and for more security at schools. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is telling fellow lawmakers not to expect a vote on gun control anytime soon. In the wake of the mass shootings in Buffalo and Texas, Schumer says he will not bring any gun control measures to the floor because he does not believe there will be enough Republican votes to pass them. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut says it's important even just to get to the stage where you can vote on proposed measures.
We're putting people on the record, right? One way or the other, we're going to have a debate here. We are going to force people to tell America which side they are on.
One proposal that has some promise is the red flags legislation by Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal and GOP Senator Lindsey Graham. It would establish procedures for removing firearms from people judged to be a danger to themselves or others. Lawmakers have tried and failed for the last decade to pass gun restrictions. Here are some past efforts. In 2012, following the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary, Democrats drafted legislation that expanded background checks on gun buyers, banned assault weapons, and limited the size of gun magazines. But talks stretched on for months with no deal, and the one that was actually struck ultimately failed. After the Pulse nightclub shooting in 2016, there were 4 competing proposals aimed at curbing gun sales. All 4 failed. In the wake of the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history, the 2017 attack in Las Vegas, there was a bipartisan ban on bump stocks proposed. Efforts in Congress stalled, but the Trump administration eventually enacted it through an executive order. And after the 2018 Parkland shooting, Senator Marco Rubio introduced a red flag bill seeking to give law enforcement the ability to restrict gun access for unstable or potentially violent people. While the bill was reintroduced twice, it never received a floor vote. Bishops around the country have been weighing in on the gun control debate. One of the latest, Bishop Daniel Flores of Brownsville, Texas, wrote on Twitter, "Don't tell me that guns aren't the problem. People are. I'm sick of hearing it. The darkness first takes our children, who then kill our children using the guns that are easier to obtain than aspirin. We sacralize death's instruments and then are surprised that death uses them." And now, more heartache for this small community. The husband of one of the teachers killed has died of a heart attack. Joe Garcia passing away just 2 days after his wife Irma was gunned down while trying to protect her students. Family members posted the news on social media saying they believe Joe died of a broken heart after losing the love of his life. The Garcias leave behind 4 children. A GoFundMe has been set up to raise money for the family. If you'd like to donate, just go to GoFundMe.com and search Joe and Irma Garcia. The Catholic Church has been standing with the mourning community, helping them grieve those lost. Wednesday night, the victims' names were read at Sacred Heart Church in Uvalde as kids brought up roses to the altar. San Antonio Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller also taught the kids how to sign peace, love, and Holy Spirit to help them communicate for this event that is beyond words. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, John Lavenberg, is in Texas right now and was at that Mass. He joins us now to tell us more about it. Thanks for being here, John.
Happy to be here, Christine.
John, what an emotional church service. I got choked up watching the video as they read the names of all of the victims. What moved you the most?
You know, Christine, it's like you just said, when they were reading those names and those 21 kids got up from the back 2 pews of the church, got in a line, and as those names were read, one by one brought a flower up to the altar. It was very moving. There wasn't really a dry tear in the church after that. And then that was, you know, right after when communion happened. Immediately after that, the children went up to the altar at the invitation of Archbishop Gustavo, and he taught them sign language, peace, love, and Holy Spirit, led the entire church through that, and then gave words of support and hope. So it was just very moving overall, those moments when those children were involved.
We hear Archbishop Gustavo will be meeting today with the suspect's family. Why does he feel that's important to do?
Christine, what Archbishop Gustavo said is he was very clear and very adamant. He went to when Governor Greg Abbott, when he called the shooter evil, called the gunman evil, and he said that he doesn't agree with that. He said this was an evil action, a terrible action, a tragic action, but he shouldn't have called him evil. And so he wants to show support to the shooter's family and be there for them as well, saying that they're hurting too. No one can imagine what they're going through. And so he wants to be there to support them.
And right now, I know you're standing outside of the Civic Center where relief efforts are centered. Describe what's going on there. What are you seeing?
So right now, what's going on behind me is families, parents, children, teachers, workers, anyone really in town can come here to get counseling and support. You can see the food trucks set up behind me, so they're serving food. People have started to come outside to eat. And it's just a warm, welcoming environment for people that have been affected by this tragedy. And this is the place where families came, parents came to reunify with their kids immediately after the tragedy. And since then, it has been the point of contact for everyone that needs any kind of support, and it will likely continue to be so.
John, this is such a small community. I think I read 16,000 is the population. I know you've been speaking with some of the people there. What have you learned from them?
One thing that really crystallized it for me, the size of this community, is I spoke to a woman yesterday who said one of the victims, one of the children, was at her house 2 weeks ago, or excuse me, last Saturday for her granddaughter's birthday party. And she talked about the way that that child's mother had plans for her to take swim lessons over the summer and do all of these different things, and how that won't be able to happen. So she talked about just seeing that child a week ago, and then she talked about how 2 weeks ago she was with the gunman's grandmother, who she said is a very devout Catholic, someone known in the Catholic community here, and is a lovely lady. And she just talked about the fact that seeing her and seeing the child, and that was something echoed by many other people as well, that this is, like you said, a small community of only about 16,000 people. Everyone knows each other is a common phrase that's been said to me, and so this has really hit home for a lot of people that may not have even known anyone directly impacted or had a familiar relationship with anyone directly impacted.
And John, it also seems like it's a very Catholic community, or at least a Christian community. We're seeing a lot of prayer circles and the Mass that you were at. Are you seeing that as well?
Absolutely, Christine. And like you mentioned, I was at the Mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church last night at 6 p.m. They had one the night before at 8 p.m. And I was there a little while ago, and they will have one again tonight at 6 p.m. So it seems like it's going to be continuing, that the faith community, whether it's Christian, Catholic, is going to be at the forefront of getting this town through this. And just to add to that, you know, you can see these food trucks, and you can see all around town, these organizations aren't just at their parishes or churches. They're all around with different modes of transportation, offering different services and support however they can.
So nice to see all that support happening. John Lavenberg, national correspondent of the Tablet and Crux. We'll check back in with you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thank you, Christine.
As we said, John will return Friday right here on Currents News with another report from Texas as the community tries to cope after the shooting. Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Uvalde was home for several of the victims and their families. According to Archbishop Gustavo, 4 of the 19 children killed were members of the Sacred Heart community, and the 2 adults who died attended Mass there regularly. In particular, the teacher Irma Garcia was well known throughout the parish for taking on several leadership roles at the church. Catholic Charities Archdiocese of San Antonio will be providing crisis relief services to those affected by the shooting, including emergency financial assistance for family members who need to travel to Uvalde. All those services will be free. If you want to donate to the charity's efforts, just go to ccaosa.org/Catholic Charities Uvalde. And be sure to stay with Currents News and the Tablet for the latest on any developments in the Texas school shooting. There's a lot more news headed your way. An overwhelming sense of hopelessness. A pastor reflects on Minneapolis 2 years after George Floyd's murder. And protecting life at conception, Oklahoma's governor signs the nation's strictest abortion measure into law. Plus, traveling 1,200 miles to fulfill a late friend's final wish. The unique gift the Holy Father received from a determined pilgrim. It's been 2 years since the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Now, a Baptist pastor and community leader is speaking out about how the city has been changed forever. Reg Chapman has the story.
This is the hurt! This is the pain!
2 years after the world-watched video of George Floyd taking his last breath, the healing continues.
I think there's depression and there's despair, and people don't know it's depression. They don't even know it's despair. You know, I think one of the things is this overwhelming sense of hopelessness that is permeating our community right now, that nothing is ever going to get better.
Brian Herron is president of Zion Baptist Church. He says those feelings boiled over, leading to an uprising in the streets,
Say his name! George Floyd!
a collective cry for justice. So a sanctuary has become a place of healing from the storm created by the murder of George Floyd.
It became clear to me that we could be out on the block and have an impact and make a difference, and we can do the protests and things, but where do people come to be well and to process their pain, to process their grief?
Pastor Herron believes 2 years after George Floyd's murder, some things have changed while others remain the same.
I think we're still dealing with the trauma, but let's go to the other side also. This has really created some activism and a expression of optimism from a lot of our young people that they can make a difference and that they can change things.
That was Reg Chapman reporting. Reverend Brian Heron says people can get help processing their feelings and even get professional help. However, they must want to heal in order for true change to happen. Minneapolis is currently trying to decide the future of a police precinct that was damaged during the protests. 3 days after George Floyd's murder, the 3rd police precinct was set on fire, and it's still abandoned, burned, and barricaded 2 years later. In a community conversation session held last week, Longfellow neighbors were asked if they would like to see the structure rebuilt as another police station. 75% of them said no, saying it would glorify the history that happened there.
It is such a painful wound over there. When I think about the communal trauma that's housed at that site, it's hard to imagine a way forward.
Neighbors suggested the space could be used as a jobs and financial training center, affordable housing, or just held as public land. The city of Minneapolis says their plan for the old precinct is still up in the air. A husband and wife were arrested and charged Wednesday for allegedly trying to smuggle guns from their home in Georgia to New York for illegal resale. According to prosecutors, the pair ran at least 68 guns from September of 2018 to March of 2022. The couple was charged with conspiracy and gun trafficking. They could each face a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison if convicted. Oklahoma now has one of the nation's strictest abortion laws. The governor there signed the bill into law Wednesday. It bans abortions from the moment of conception and allows people to sue abortion providers who perform the procedure. There are exceptions for medical emergencies or in the case of rape or incest. However, the use of contraception is still legal, and that includes the Plan B or morning after pill. The communion ban for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is now extending outside her home diocese of California. The Diocese of Arlington, just outside Washington, D.C., will also not allow Pelosi to receive the Eucharist. Bishop Michael Burbidge said Wednesday that he would respect the ban imposed by San Francisco Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone last week because of Pelosi's staunch advocacy for legalized abortion. The Vatican is inviting Catholics to join Pope Francis in praying the Rosary for peace in Ukraine and the world. In union with Marian shrines around the world, the Holy Father will lead the Rosary before the statue of Mary, Queen of Peace, on May 31st. The statue was commissioned by Pope Benedict XV to ask for the Virgin Mary's intercession to end the First World War. Pope Francis had a special encounter with a pilgrim at the end of his general audience Wednesday. The Holy Father was presented with a portrait of himself. But as Kelsey Gussie reports, the special delivery was all to fulfill a late friend's final wish.
It was like asking for a miracle, seemingly impossible. But Iban Perez, a young Basque from Lequeito, has fulfilled the promise he made to painter Alberto Lopez Brasaola before his death last March. Perez, accompanied by Brasaola's family, gave Pope Francis Brasaola's painting at the end of the general audience in St. Peter's Square. Brasaola passed away at the age of 84 after a life among paintbrushes. Sometimes he painted walls for work, and sometimes he drew inspiration from a magazine about hearts to bolster his creativity. To make Brasaola's wish come true, Perez also asked for help on social media. A journalist by profession, he enlisted the help of his Vatican colleagues to get the long-awaited invitation from the Holy See. Once he received it, he and Brasaola's family traveled to Rome, together with the painting, to greet Pope Francis.
Una experiencia única.
It's a unique experience, an experience that cannot be described. My mother is blind, and she told me yesterday, I wish I could see the Pope. Now I have seen him. I saw him face to face for my mother. And that's it. It's a dream come true. In addition to the challenges of meeting with the Pope, both Perez and Brasaola's family paid for the trip and accommodations in Rome out of their own pockets. something that Perez feels has been worth it.
Alberto quería que yo este cuadro se lo diese al...
Alberto wanted me to give this painting to the Pope. I believe that he would have been pleased with it ending up at the Basilica of Santa Maria de Lequitio, but I know that it will be in the Casa di Santa Marta, where the Pope resides. I hope that when the Pope looks at this painting, it will tell him, Jorge Maria, take strength and go the distance, because he told us to pray for him.
That was Kelsey Gussie reporting. Apart from the painting, Perez also presented Pope Francis with tea and sweet biscuits that are common in Argentina. Still to come on Currents News, they jumped into action quickly. Members of the NYPD hailed as heroes for a save they made in the subway. And how this patriotic buoy is commemorating the location of a key moment in U.S. history. It was a heroic rescue caught on camera. NYPD Detective Henry Greco and Officer Jason Macaluso were honored on Wednesday after they leapt into action to save a visually impaired man from an oncoming train. The two officers were patrolling the Grant Avenue station in Brooklyn when they saw a 61-year-old man struggling to get up after falling onto the tracks. But they managed to pull him to safety just as a train was pulling into the station. The three men reunited for the first time since the incident when the MTA honored the two officers with a Hero of the Subway award. And from celebrating first responders to commemorating a key moment in history. On Wednesday, the U.S. Coast Guard was on a patriotic mission in Baltimore, honoring Francis Scott Key, the man who penned the national anthem. Tommy Clark was on board for the special event and has more on the unique memorial.
Mid-morning, the cutter's crew set out from the Coast Guard yard for Fort McHenry. The Philadelphia-based vessel is in Baltimore to plant this massive star-spangled buoy.
To be a part of this, and especially our boat, because we're not usually the one that gets to do it, we really need experience.
The historic Francis Scott Key Memorial Buoy marks the spot where Key wrote the lyrics of the national anthem during the Battle of Baltimore in 1814.
With that moment, as the dawn's early light hit that flag, Key knew that Fort McHenry had withstood the bombardment and Baltimore had been saved.
Like a well-oiled machine, the tender started to deploy the buoy. Guiding the way, a crane operator hoists it up, hauls it over, and drops the buoy into the Patapsco River.
You have to go through a pretty intensive, usually around 6-month training process to actually be qualified and trusted to be out here.
Crew members say this buoy, now in place between the bridge that bears the same name and Fort McHenry, represents more than a marker, just like the stars and stripes that adorn it.
The Star-Spangled Banner is not even really about the flag. It's about what we as Americans do underneath that flag. When we are at our darkest hours, when we have our backs up against the wall, the most patriotic thing that we can do is to come together and help one another.
That was Tommy Clark reporting. Setting the Star-Spangled Buoy has been a formal duty for the U.S. Coast Guard ever since 1980. It's set each summer and removed just before the winter, so you have plenty of time to check it out if you're ever in Baltimore. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.